Good evening, all, and welcome to episode 3 of the Huddy Hui, live on Huddy Sports. We have a very special guest tonight. We'll explain very shortly. It's also day 2 of level 3 of the lockdown, and it's good to have you, as always, Adam, on the show.
We're catching up to the COVID-19 levels, which is very encouraging for the future of this program. Good to be here, and really looking forward to reminiscing about the Ranfurly Shield and sharing some Otago rugby stories with our guest tonight.
Oh, there are some pretty good Otago rugby stories and some big heartaches, Adam. And we'll be talking that tonight with our guest, Highlanders utility back and Otago rugby player, Michael Collins. Michael, great to have you on the program tonight. Unlike the rest of New Zealand, you've been in lockdown for quite a while because you were in Argentina at the time when the Prime Minister announced the borders were closing.
Yeah, we've done it pretty good at the moment. When do we get back? I wouldn't even actually have a clue what day this is, but it's probably about 10 or 12 days longer than level 4. So yeah, we're getting used to it now, mate. But pretty it's become a lifestyle now, I guess.
Yeah, so let's talk about your early rugby. Of course, Queenstown is where you're based with your family at the moment. Of course, you started out your high school rugby career at Wakatipu High School, where you were captain of the under-16 Otago Metro team. What was...
But you have done your research, haven't you?
Adam and I are very well researched rugby commentators, so we certainly get to know the key stats about our players. So Wakatipu High School, what was the move to behind your move to Otago boys?
Yeah, it was good. Look, I love my time at Wakatipu. Obviously, growing up in Queenstown, we're pretty lucky with everything we've got here. But I think it was just one of those ones that I guess it's just the way sport is at the moment, that if you want to try make it somewhere or sort of progress, you've got to go to the bigger cities, unfortunately. And there's still definitely exceptions, and I hope there's always going to be exceptions, because it's quite cool when you see country guys make it who are still in the country. But yeah, made the decision. My brother went to Otago boys 2 years before, so just sort of followed him. He went to the hostel as well, went to boarding school. But yeah, it was a pretty good decision for me, I think. We had some awesome coaches in that time that we've still got now, so yeah, pretty good. Pretty happy with it. It's good fun.
One of those coaches is Ryan Martin, who ended up at the Melbourne Rebels, and the Melbourne Rebels beat the Highlanders in Dunedin this year. What kind of stitch-up is that, Ryan, sharing all the secrets with Australians?
He must be. He was pretty happy to claim that one too, I think, as he should be.
And tell me about Ryan and your time at Otago boys, because you were a captain down there. You played on television, and the team was very successful.
Yeah, he was awesome, mate. He was probably the first time, definitely at my sort of time in school, where he sort of probably tried to get it to more the whole professional sort of training side of things. So it was probably the first time we sort of got introduced to it, I guess. But yeah, no, he was awesome. He came in my sixth form, halfway through my sixth form. Him and a guy, Brian Ashwin, an old teacher who, shouldn't say old teacher, should I? Teacher. But yeah, and they sort of controlled that, which was awesome. And then yeah, lucky enough to sort of be with him for the last couple of years.
And you progressed through to the New Zealand secondary schools team, first player in a long time from Otago to achieve that. But tell me about the positional swaps that you've had in your career. Which position do you most prefer on the field, and why?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy on that. I think I just enjoy being out there in some role. I think about probably 2015, I think I moved to fullback. Got an opportunity. One of the boys got a hemorrhage, I think, or something like that before the game, so he had to pull out. So I managed to get a shot there and ended up playing a couple of games at 15. Used to be a midfielder, obviously, and loved that. And then went overseas and probably had a full year at 15, which helped quite a bit. And then, yeah, from there came back, and I just seemed to probably fit into that role a bit more, probably get a few more opportunities than in the midfield at the time. So, yeah, kept on that. And then, yeah, sort of, I guess at the moment, it's about keeping sort of midfield and fullback open, so you can sort of fit in where needed.
It's also to note, Michael, that you're also quite a talented cricketer as well. There was one news ex-cricketer. That's right. There's one article I was reading back when you were young. They were comparing you to be the next Jeff Wilson of cricket and rugby.
Was it? Well, that didn't follow through, did it?
No.
Congrats.
Yeah. So as well as the New Zealand secondary school boys, you also went on with the under-20s in 2013, and you also played with the likes of Ari Savia. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, that was awesome, mate. Again, I guess it's just about progressing up. Sort of those opportunities opened up new doors. We went over to France, and I wouldn't say we had the best campaign. I think we lost the semi and then lost the third and fourth as well. But it was one of those things. Look, I guess probably results aren't the be all end all. You think they are at the time, but they're not the be all end all then. But played with some good mates back then, and obviously some guys that have gone on to do really well, which is cool. But yeah, pretty lucky to be sort of exposed to that stuff that early.
2013 was also the year that Otago finally won the Ranfurly Shield after a 56-year hiatus, 20,418 days. Otago without the Ranfurly Shield. Tell us about that momentous win, and did you have any interactions with the 1957 team before and after the success?
I wouldn't think before. Sort of, it's one of those things we probably didn't touch on that much. Like, I feel like it's probably been a while. I think the good thing with that is that there were so many new guys in that team that probably didn't understand the whole massiveness deal, the whole, climax of the whole thing. So it was one of those ones we just got stuck in, and a couple of guys played really well that game, and sort of managed to win. And then for us, it was more after we realised how much of a big deal it meant to the province, which is pretty cool because you don't really get that stuff anymore. And then obviously we've been pretty lucky in my last 6 or 7 years to sort of have a good run at it. It's been pretty lucky part of Otago rugby lately.
What was the most interesting thing that happened after the 2013 win in the lead up to the first defence against Hawke's Bay?
In terms of no, I think Brownie was we just had a good time, mate. What's that?
In terms of nocturnal activities and things that haven't been shared before that can be shared now.
We had some really good sponsors and stuff. We sort of got the bus into Opti and Dunners and had a big couple of nights there. Lone Star were really good to us, so we sort of had a few team things. But it was just about enjoying it. I think what we did really well was we sort of flushed the next week and sort of tried not to worry about that for a couple of days, so we really could enjoy it. Because I think what you do sometimes, you worry about the next thing instead of actually enjoying what's happening. So I think we might have enjoyed it quite a bit. But it was good, especially being young, sort of getting shown some ropes, I guess. But yeah, it would have been really nice to hold on to that last defence, bar a couple of interesting decisions at the end. But yeah, is what it is.
It was the shortest tenure in Ranfurly Shield history. Tell us about some of those.
No, it wasn't. There was a couple of 4 days and stuff in there. We were all good.
Very good. But tell us about that Hawke's Bay game, because really it was a very memorable occasion. Ehai West scored a classic try. Buxton Popoliti, one of my heroes, played that day and was in sensational form. But tell us your memories of that game, which was played in front of a huge crowd, probably the biggest you've just about played in front of in Dunedin.
Yeah, it was. I think that was sort of probably the lucky thing about Otago, like I guess still quite a grassroots province, is that Shield meant a lot of people, a lot of things to sort of the whole province being so wide. So I think a lot of people travelled for that game, which is quite cool. And yeah, it's pretty rare for ITM, for Mitre 10 at this sort of day and age to pack a stadium out like that. So it was awesome, mate. Yeah, obviously there was a discrepancy over the ruck penalty at the end, whether it was that, but look, it's done now, and it's newspaper writing, it's fish and chip packet. So yeah, it's one of those things. There's no point dwelling on it too much. We it was part of the legacy, I guess, part of the Shield fun.
That was Ben Franks. It was an absolute classic. Now, the other thing that I wanted to ask you, though, about that Ranfurly Shield success, it happened a short while after it was widely reported that Otago Rugby was in some state of financial peril. Tell us how bad that was as a young guy in the Otago team with that uncertainty, and then winning the Ranfurly Shield and making the Union a lot of money with that big crowd.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was my first year, so I was just out of school, and then I actually remember it sort of quite vividly. We were just in training, and then we sort of had all the player association and the management come and talk to us. There was obviously talk about folding and stuff. I don't know the ins and outs of it too much, as far as all the financials and that jazz. But obviously, there was real talk of the union folding over. But guys have come in and done a really good job. The board, obviously, Richard Kinley's still there. He's done a good job turning the province around. Because I think also the other side from Otago and the supporters, I don't think anyone would have let it fold, or would have done their best not to. So, yeah, one of those things. But I think it's probably prepared us quite well for things like this, because we've run a tight ship for the last 8 or so years. So when something like this comes, and obviously hits financially pretty hard, the sort of stuff we've had in place the last few while, obviously we're still going to be relatively affected, but hopefully we haven't been having too much fat, so not too much needs to get trimmed.
Tell us about winning the Shield in 2018 against Waikato yet again, and being the captain that day, lifting the Shield. Tell us about that special moment.
Yeah, again, we were having quite a good year up until that stage, obviously. And then, Sam Anderson-Heather was the captain for the season, but he was out injured, so I sort of took a lucky break there, obviously. But yeah, it was awesome. It was just one of those games. I think we started off and scored about 3 tries in 20 minutes, and then they came back and played really well for that bit. And then it was just one of those, I guess, classic Ranfurly Shield ones where you just hang on for the last probably 60. Yeah, but it was awesome. It was awesome. It was almost sort of, I guess, second time around you can appreciate it a wee bit more. Again, we had heaps of young guys in the team, so I think my coolest bit about that was sort of seeing them get to enjoy it the same way we did 5 or 6 years ago.
One of the things I always do before this program, Michael, is I keep a copy of the New Zealand Rugby Almanac beside me, and I'm going to verify your claim in regards to the shortest tenures in Ranfurly Shield.
Yeah, you will.
And ironically, it was Hawke's Bay who beat you in 2013, who only held it for 6 days.
Oh,
your tenure was 13 days, 12 of which was spent hungover. But that 2018 success against Waikato was a wonderful highlight. What is it about the rivalry between Waikato and Otago that brings out the best in both sides?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I think it's probably the Shield more than anything in that. I think if you looked at the games we defended it in last year, we played like shit away from home for most of it. And then for some reason, sort of once, whether it's the stadium or whether it's sort of the lift we got and stuff, but it was a real sort of, thing we tried to dish up and try solve last year, that we'd struggle to play away from home and we'd come in and we'd be a top class team at home. So it's one of those things that you sort of get up for when everyone wants it. And it's just sort of something I guess one of the reasons why you play footy. So yeah, I think it sort of adds a rivalry to any team.
In your tenure last year, which was your favourite win and why?
What's your favourite? Well, probably Naki, I think. We sort of, I think we had Southland and Manawatu beforehand, and they're obviously good teams. And we sort of, I guess, when we were looking at them, I think people probably would have given us a good shot to beat them. So when we obviously got those results, we were happy enough. But I think we got ridden off against Naki, sort of because obviously they've got a lot of quality players and that sort of stuff. So I think for us that was a massive turning point for our season, that we knew we could sort of compete with it for a long time. And I think that was just, again, the classic Shield game where they had a lot of opportunities that they sort of probably missed and they really missed. And then, it was just one of those ones that I guess it sort of brought us closer. And, one of those ones to tick off, I guess.
Tell me about the 2 PGNs in the Otago backline, the New Zealand Sevens lads.
They're not bad, are they?
Billy Karoy, fantastic. Must be so exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time, playing in the same back three as them. I don't know what
it's awesome, mate. They're good kids as well. They're real good people, actually, which is massive. But they get on like a house on fire, and they've added heaps to Otago rugby in their short time. So hopefully they stay with us for a while. But yeah, they're good fellas, and they're gonna if they're around a while, they're really gonna stamp their mark on Otago, which is pretty cool.
So, Michael, you played over in Wales for 2 seasons at Scarlets, and then you've made the move back to Otago, and then were selected for the Blues, and now you're with the Highlanders. What's the option of you heading back to Wales anytime soon, or are you still chasing the black jersey?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I wouldn't say that, but I think for me, it's just going to be about ending up somewhere. Enjoy playing my footy, and with sort of good people in a good area. But yeah, I sort of probably weighing up those decisions now. Obviously, this COVID stuff's probably put a freeze on a few things, but that's all right. That's what it is. So yeah, it's just about getting back on the park and having some fun, and then seeing wherever your feet fall.
The captaincy of rugby teams, Michael, what's been your experiences before leading Otago, and what do you do to rally the troops?
Look, I was really lucky because I fell into it when Jamie Ben Herring was coach. And I don't know if you know Jamie, but he's a pretty eccentric sort of guy, and he's pretty out there, and he's really open to everything, which I think was massive. Like, he's open to trying abstract things and sort of different ways to get the boys going. And I guess he's probably more of a man manager than a technical coach, as he got really good technical coaches around him. So I think all those coaches fit into their role, and then with leadership, I think we just had a really good crew as well that we also fit into the role we were needed in. So yeah, at the same time, they were pretty easy boys to help out, I guess, because everyone's pretty self-reliant and independent. So all we had to do was sort of steer the ship for a wee bit, and the rest took care of itself.
What did your experiences at the Blues teach you about leadership? Because the Blues wasn't always a successful team.
No, you're right. I think up at the Blues there was a really easy stereotype to have a go at about leadership, and then about culture, which I think is pretty off the mark. But each, obviously, everyone's entitled to their opinion. But yeah, it was one of those ones. Obviously, we went through some difficult times up there, but yeah, it was really interesting because the team dynamics and we had and the sort of camaraderie and stuff was really close. One of the closest we've probably been in. So yeah, it's one of those things that we didn't get the results, but it was certainly it was certainly interesting times, and I wish we obviously had got a few more wins than we had.
Sonny Bill Williams and Martin Nonu, two very big personalities in rugby, polarising. How did you find them?
Yeah, no, they were awesome. Obviously, Sonny was there for 3 years as well. And yeah, I think when you talk about leadership and stuff, obviously those guys have been there, done everything. And they're relatively quiet people, but they sort of, the way they act is what's expected. The diligence they have in training and all that jazz is second to none, really. Because
if you read the newspapers, Sonny Bill Williams is the opposite of what most rugby players seem to say.
Shouldn't read the newspaper, should you?
So, just coming to the end, Michael, when we ever get back out of this lockdown and we get back on the footy field, for yourself as a professional rugby player, would you rather see Super Rugby continue, or would you rather be out there playing in the Mitre 10 Cup?
Oh, look, I guess probably the cliche answer is just we want to play some footy, but I think the way they're looking at it, hopefully at the moment, we're going to be able to do both in some way or the other. What that looks like is obviously dependent on how the next probably month or two goes. But yeah, I don't know if we can play a Mitre 10 and there's All Blacks in there, that'd be awesome. Look, it's just one of those things. There's not, I don't know, for my mindset, I guess there's not too much point getting worried about what it's going to look like or what's not going to look like. I think for us is just staying in nick, trying to stay in nick. And then sort of just anticipating when we're going to play, and then just sort of making when we go we're ready.
Do you think the break from the lockdown could potentially help the Highlanders? It wasn't a great start to your season.
Yeah, I think so, mate. I think it's given us a real clear time just to look back and probably do an end of year review halfway through. Obviously we weren't in the position on the table we wanted to be in before this, so by the sounds of things, everything's going to get scratched anyway, and we start again. So that's only going to be a positive. But yeah, it's just, look, we're under no sort of illusions that we've got to be better when we come back, and that's sort of on us players to sort of make sure that's right.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for your time tonight, coming on the Huddy Hui as our guest. It's greatly appreciated. We hope that the lockdown finishes in 2 weeks and you can get back out on the footy field and getting back to what you do best.
Yeah, mate. Thanks very much.
No worries. Thank you very much, Michael.
Cheers. See ya.
So that was Michael Collins, the utility back for the Highlanders, and plus also the Otago rugby captain. Of course, in 2018, lifted the Ranfurly Shield. Adam, we've got a really good insight there to a professional rugby player, not only who's played in New Zealand, but has also played overseas.
Well, Michael Collins has had a long career now, Brad. He's up to 60 games for Otago, 29 games in Super Rugby for both the Blues and the Highlanders. I love the Ranfurly Shield, Brad, and what a thrill it must have been for Michael Collins to hoist the Ranfurly Shield above his head last year. So many iconic images in New Zealand rugby involve famous players lifting the log of wood. Who could ever forget John Mitchell lifting it for Waikato, ending Auckland's tenure of 61 successful defences in 1993. What about that picture on the photograph of your book? What a wonderful shot that is.
Oh, it certainly is. That is, I believe that is Daryl Gibson holding the Ranfurly Shield there in his playing days for Canterbury. Of course, that good book there of the Shield by Lindsay Knight is, of course, hasn't been updated since the early 2000s, Adam, but the stories within the book are simply amazing. So going right back to 6th of August 1904 for the first ever game or challenge for the Ranfurly Shield. Of course, it was between Wellington and Auckland at Alexandra Park. And of course, the mighty Wellington won 6-3 that day.
And evidently, the final match of the 2019 season, Canterbury North Harbour, Harry Allen, one of those gnarly Canterbury prop forwards, crashed over for a last play try to keep the Ranfurly Shield in Christchurch for the summer. That was Ranfurly Shield fixture number 700. Canterbury have the record for the most successful challenges, 16. Auckland had the record for the most wins, 158. Canterbury winning their 150th match with that triumph over North Harbour. Otago, 43 wins in 90 games. Wellington, 50 wins in 98 games. Our province hasn't held it since 2008. The longest tenure was Auckland's 61 match reign between 1985 and 1993. And prior to that, Canterbury had held it for 25 successful defences, which is the second best effort. And one of the great stories in Ranfurly Shield history involves the biggest scoring game, which was between Auckland and North Otago. Auckland won by 139-5, and John Kerwin scored 8 tries, still the record. Grant Fox was involved that day. He has the record for the most points in the Ranfurly Shield, 932 points in 57 matches. But North Otago led Auckland 5-0 in 1993, and Brett McEwen, the dairy farmer from Oamaru, scored the first try, and he's still paying for beers to share his story about the time that North Otago led Auckland in the 1993 Ranfurly Shield. The other unfortunate statistic about the Ranfurly Shield, there are a lot of them, but King Country, Colomedes Province, 20 failed attempts, which is the worst record of any province in New Zealand. 17 provinces have held the log of wood.
Well, that's right. As you said, there are some really tough records out there for some of our provinces. And of course, talking to Michael Collins tonight, Otago had that long tenure without the Shield. And of course, who can forget the 1994 match and David Latter giving away that penalty?
I remember watching it as an 8-year-old, and Andrew Mertens kicked the winning goal from directly in front of the post. And then he did it again in 2002, shortly after a Justin Marshall try. Otago went 22 games, 20,418 days without the Ranfurly Shield. They won it off Wellington in an awful season for them overall in 1957. They only won 6 of 15 games. They used 46 players, 18 of which were debutants, but they managed to arrest the Ranfurly Shield from Wellington's grasp and then lost it the next week to Taranaki 11-9. And Taranaki at that time were coached by JJ Stewart, the former All Black mentor. So they had a long period with the Ranfurly Shield. But one of the great things about the Otago period with the Ranfurly Shield in the 50s was the fact that Tupi Dyack, the first guy to play 100 games for Otago, a long-time stalwart of Otago rugby, legendary service in the community, was at fullback that day. And he told me that the manager of the Otago team was a staunch Presbyterian, but he went to the Catholic Church with the Doolins on a promise that if Otago won the Ranfurly Shield, he would adhere, at least momentarily, to the Catholic faith. The other thing that happened when Otago won the Ranfurly Shield in 1957, Tuppy Dyack told me this, was that they ordered in crates of champagne. The Ranfurly Shield is such a wonderful trophy, full of colour and controversy and excellence. And its place in the new setup of New Zealand rugby hasn't really been discussed. Canterbury are the holders. If the NPC goes ahead, presumably it will follow the same format as it's always followed. But if the NPC falls over, the Ranfurly Shield will serve a hiatus for the first time since World War II. Is there a possibility or a need maybe to rejuvenate the Ranfurly Shield concept, Brad?
Well, the Ranfurly Shield, in my opinion, of course, I'm a massive NPC fan. I still call it the NPC, and the Ranfurly Shield are some of the greatest games of rugby you will ever see. There is so much pride and passion on the line, and it'd be a sad shame to see such a treasured piece of trophy to be almost forgotten about if we decided to continue to neglect our domestic game, Adam. Of course, I have two famous games of rugby. They're some of my two most famous games, and also one game that is always burned in our memories. Of course, it's still burnt in yours, Adam. We can go there very soon. But there's two games that stand out for me. Of course, 2008, Wellington beating Auckland 27-0 at Eden Park, winning the Shield for the first time after 27 years and keeping it for the summer. Of course, the last Wellington team to win the Shield was in 1981, where they beat Waikato 22-4 that day, and the likes of Stu Wilson, Murray Mexted, Alan Hewson, Jamie Selman, and Bernie Fraser played that game. And when we look at the 08 team that beat Auckland, yet again, some really big names here. Jose Aguirre, Corey Jane, Petty Wepu, Jeremy Thrush, Thomas Waldron, Ross Filippo, and still playing Dane Coles.
Well, that 1981 Ranfurly Shield success at Rugby Park in Hamilton was spectacular, and Bernie Fraser scored 2 tries that day, and the last try was an intercept over the course of 90 metres, and the Wellington halfback hilariously commentated the try as Bernie galloped away, and he was commentating it Winston McCarthy style, and even the Waikato players who were resigned to losing the match were laughing as Fraser dashed away for yet another try for Wellington, whose period with the Shield, from memory, was only brief. In 2008, they had a very difficult win against Tasman the following weekend after they thumped Auckland. And I recall that Thomas Waldron, whose birthday was yesterday, happy birthday, Thomas, had a very big game in that match.
That's also someone else's birthday yesterday too, wasn't it, Adam? So
it was. It was John Daly's birthday yesterday. It was Andrew Merton's birthday yesterday. It was Saddam Hussein's birthday yesterday. It was Oscar Schindler's birthday yesterday. And least noteworthy, it was your humble correspondent's birthday yesterday.
Now, the other game that stands out to me, Adam, and it's got nothing to do with Wellington, okay, but this was Southland taking on Canterbury in 2009 on October the 23rd at Lancaster Park, the old famous ground that's now gone. But Southland won that game 9-3. It was the first time they won the Shield in 50 years. It was played in some of the most horrendous conditions played in rugby. And they managed to hold off Canterbury, who were extremely dominant at that time in NPC rugby history. But playing in that game in particular, kicking all the points, was Robbie Robertson, playing fullback for them. Jamie McIntosh won the ball from a ruck towards the end of the game that managed to give Southland the win. And Jimmy Coward didn't play, but he was the water boy of that game.
Well, Jamie McIntosh, built like a forklift driver, was a real character in the Ranfurly Shield history. The following year, Southland defended the Ranfurly Shield 16-12 against Otago. Yet another heartbreaking loss for Otago in that long sequence that they went deprived of the log of wood. And he scored a try, allegedly from a double movement in Invercargill, to keep the Ranfurly Shield in Southland's hands for another week. So Jamie McIntosh, the former All Black prop, huge man, one of a select group of individuals actually to make the New Zealand secondary schools team 3 years in a row. Todd Miller, the Waikato halfback, did that. And who could ever forget some of the contributions that Todd Miller made to the Ranfurly Shield for Waikato when they held it for 24 defences, ending in 1998. Jonah Lomu, of course, was in the New Zealand secondary schools team for 3 years. And I don't think Jonah ever won the Ranfurly Shield, which emphasises what a difficult trophy it is to win. The other Ranfurly Shield memory, which you're going to bring up, and I don't like you doing it, is the versus Canterbury match in 2001 when Ben Blair scored in the 119th minute to keep the Ranfurly Shield in Christchurch for another year. The penalty count that day was 22-4. I remember talking to a prominent Wellington official at the time, and I said, how much money did that cost the city? And he told me $8 million would have been generated into the local economy because of the sellout crowd the next weekend had Wellington won. But the interesting thing about Wellington in that period of Ranfurly Shield heartache was 2 years later they had a challenge against Canterbury, which ended in a 38-all draw. And Cameron McIntyre, now coaching at Christ College, kicked a record 7 penalties. Robbie Deans also kicked 7 penalties in a Ranfurly Shield match in 1984. And the Ranfurly Shield has so much history that it's always creating something unique. And last year, you'd be interested in this as a referee, Rebecca Marnie, the 2-time World Cup winning Blackburn, became the first woman to officiate a Ranfurly Shield match when she controlled the match between Otago and North Otago. Here's a real beauty of a stat about Rebecca Marnie. She is the most prolific drop kicker in New Zealand women's rugby history. She kicked 4 drop goals in 69 first-class games. And to put that into perspective, Wellington, in their entire 20-year history of official Farah Palmer Cup competition, have never kicked a drop goal. Rebecca Marnie, a wonderful player with a prodigious boot.
There's a fantastic statistic about the Wellington Pride there, Adam, not her kicking a drop goal. Speak about Rebecca Marnie, as well as being the first female referee to referee a Ranfurly Shield match, she also made her Mitre 10 Cup debut last year as well. She refereed about 2 or 3 games from memory. And she's also had been running as an assistant referee for a few Super Rugby games at home. So she is definitely showing a lot of young female rugby players or in the rugby fraternity that there are massive opportunities for women's rugby in this day and age, Adam.
A Central District's tennis representative, a Central District's football representative. She actually went to England for a period in 2003 and was invited into the England elite setup for women's rugby, which at that time was professional. So that was a very tempting offer, but she rejected it, thankfully, and became a huge contributor in the New Zealand rugby scene. I remember on the subject of referees too in the Ranfurly Shield, there was an infamous match in 1978 in Palmerston North when Manawatu, after nearly 3 years with the Ranfurly Shield, lost it to North Auckland 12-10, and it's alleged that the game went for well over 85 minutes.
There are many interesting stories about Ranfurly Shield rugby and refereeing performances. Let's move on. The full house, Adam. Okay, we're going to talk about the full house in rugby union. There have been 5 players that have achieved the full house. Not one of them is an All Black. Can you explain that to our audience tonight?
Right, I was talking to a friend of mine from Argentina yesterday, and we were reminiscing about Hugo Porter, the magnificent Pumas first 5. And in 1982, a year after the controversial Springbok tour of New Zealand, Hugo Porter was a part of this team called the South African Jaguars, and they went to Pretoria and beat the Springboks 21-12. And Hugo Porter scored all 4 ways, the full house, a try, a penalty, a conversion, and a drop goal. And that's only been done by 5 players against the Springboks. Rob Andrew scored 27 points doing it in 1994, also in Pretoria. There was another Argentinian who did it, Sanchez, as recently as 2018. And Diego Dominguez from Italy who was essentially the Hugo Porter of Italian rugby, he accomplished the feat as well. Daniel Carter, 255 points against South Africa, which is the most by any player. Andrew Mertens is next on that list, ironically born in Durban in 1973 on my birthday, Andrew Mertens. So he scored over 200 points against South Africa, as did Daniel Carter, but they did not complete the full house. So the point I was making to my friend from Argentina, and the point that I'm making to the audience tonight, hopefully you're out there somewhere, is that Hugo Porter's class was undisputed, and his display in that game is a contender for one of the greatest ever in rugby, yet very few people would know about it because South Africa at that time were in a state of exile in a lot of sports because of the atrocities of the apartheid regime.
Hugo Porter, in your opinion, Adam, would he go down as probably the greatest first five in world rugby?
He's certainly the greatest first five in Argentina rugby. In fact, there's no individual responsible for putting Argentina rugby on the map more than Hugo Porter. Pichot, who's running for the presidency of the IRB, is another colossal figure in that country, and he's bringing a very new and progressive approach to the leadership of that old boys network. It would be wonderful to see Pichot get the honour of president, but that's going to be a tough fight for him. Daniel Carter is the best first five I've ever seen, but Hugo Porter is in that company. Do some research on Hugo Porter, watch some footage of Hugo Porter. He is amazing, and the most amazing footage on Hugo Porter goes back to Dunedin, where our guest Michael Collins is from and playing his rugby for. Hugo Porter kicked drop goals from beyond the 22 with both feet in awful conditions with a pigskin ball against an All Blacks 15 in 1979. It wasn't an official test match, but if you look at the starting lineup, the All Blacks 15 was as good as any official national team that New Zealand could have put out at that time. Hugo Porter, a star.
Hugo Porter, a true star. He's also up there with Barry John, Dan Carter, Johnny Wilkinson, all those great names of first five rugby. And of course, World Rugby Chairmanship election in a few weeks' time will be very interesting. I think, agreeing with you, Adam, Augustin will have a great chance of being chairman if the rumours going through the media of Wales and Ireland are reconsidering their backing of Bill Beaumont, who is the current chairmanship. But let's take it back here to Wellington, because there was some big news announced on the Wellington Club Rugby website, Adam, and it's garnered a lot of attention. It's almost like the NRL, but we're actually going to be playing rugby on an island.
Well, on the subject of innovation, original ideas, and thinking from left field, there was an extraordinary article on the Club Rugby website this week suggesting that the Swindale Shield could be played on Soames Island. And it sounds ridiculous, but apparently there's been some extensive planning going on behind the scenes to ensure that this happens. The beginners construction firm have been seen on Soames Island. They can work out there now on level 3, and they've been removing some trees and mowing some lawns and creating the playing field, a field which would be much better than Helston Park. John Cross has been hired by the Dominion Post Ferry to undertake the transportation of teams to Soames Island, and there is a real enthusiasm simmering in Wellington rugby circles about the prospect of rugby on Soames Island, which would be a new and marvellous asset, I guess, to the community. We need rugby, we need it fast, and I read that story on Soames Island, which evidently offended me by saying that I mistakenly commentate the wrong names, which is only 90% true. It would be quite an experience, rugby on Soames Island.
Oh, it certainly would be. You'd have to look out for the native species like a tuatara just running across the 22, because they've lived for millions of years. But if we're going to get rugby back on the field, Soames Island is the way to go. Well, Adam,
tuataras are just as entitled to be outside under level 1 as humans.
Well, that's right. Tuataras have lived longer than any other creature on the earth. They're going to live longer than the coronavirus ever will.
Except Budgie.
Well, except Budgie. Well, he's in quarantine, isn't he? He's not allowed out. So, yeah. So. But the good news is that Cheryl from Paniki will be allowed out there to support her team on. So, no, you can't stop her. She's a passionate supporter of Paniki.
Well, no, rugby needs to think outside the square in order to resume, as Michael suggested in his piece. Otago often living on the smell of an oily rag, transporting 14 teams to Soames Island every weekend. That's going to be an oily rag situation, but we will overcome in the true spirit of the Anzacs. And a word for the Anzacs this week. What a wonderful gesture that we saw from so many people acknowledging Anzac Day in this quarantine, with the displays on the window, with mornings outside, and whatever we're going through with this lockdown, where we can still cook our sourdough bread and we can still take a walk around town and potentially pat a dog, your own. It's nothing compared to what the Anzacs sacrificed for us all.
Oh, exactly right, Adam. I presume all the people in Parnell will be so glad they can go get a soy latte now. So, but thank you for coming on again, as always, Adam. You're a fountain of knowledge. And we look forward to having you on the Hui next Wednesday.
Good fun, hopefully.
Hopefully. And thank you all for coming online again to watch episode 3 of the Huddy Hui on Huddy Sports. Keep safe. It's only level 3, but let's stick to the plan.